Hello, everybody. It's me, Bigfoot to Michigan. Rob, it's Saturday. It's February 10th. Time for an encounter story sent in by either you, a subscriber, or an email. An email from perhaps a subscriber or not. I never can tell unless they tell me specifically. So if you do send me in an email, let me know if you're a subscriber. Thanks to everybody that has subscribed to Bigfoot, Michigan Rob on YouTube. Thank you. Thank you for everybody that bought my book. Bigfoot, Michigan Rob presents True Cryptid Encounters, Book 1, found on Amazon, found in the link of this video. Thank you. I started doing these encounter stories. I can't believe it. This March is going to be 2 years doing these. 2 years, and I still got plenty that I have not gone through yet. So thank you for sending them on in, and I do apologize in advance if your story or encounter is yet to be read by me here online. So I'm going to get on with it. I'm writing you, Rob, because of some strange goings on about my ranch in Arizona. When I bought the ranch, a lot of remnants of a working ranch was left behind and kind of dilapidated, and I've built that up to modern day time. I've got a bunch of livestock, including a bunch of goats and some cattle. We used to winter horses for people around these parts who were snowbirds. Retirees, I guess, everybody. This isn't, of course, in Arizona. But not anymore because of the mysterious disappearances that happen here. In fact, lots of mysterious things happen around this place, especially as fall nears and the weather cools, like September, October, or November. Nothing happens in the summer here at all. One notable incident was the disappearance of one of my best dogs, part pit bull shepherd mix. He didn't fear anything and was a great watchdog over my pasture. He guarded the grazing stock and the sheep we used to have and the goats from local mountain lions and bobcats. So very good protective dogs from these predators. Now, you might say that the dog wandered off, but he was 10 years old and never left sight of the main house. He was a devoted dog. Some have said a bear came in from the forest at night and took him. My middle son found him exactly 14 feet up in the crotch of a pinyon pine tree. His neck was snapped. No teeth marks were found. No bear claw marks, no mountain lion tears, just a broken neck, and it was tossed up into a tree. Or if it was not tossed, someone must have put my dead dog's body up that pinyon, which my son had trouble reaching. We tried to sit down and figure out what happened. Now on to the sheep. I bartered with a half-breed for a ram and a ewe that had been down in the pasture grazing along with the other livestock, horses, goats, and such. We only had them a short while and they disappeared. For a while we thought the previous owner snuck back here, loaded up the two, and carried them off. But my wife ran into the fellow at the hardware store in town and talked to him about the strange disappearance. He came home that day with my wife, and together we spent and went about looking for any sorts of signs, some investigations. We found nothing that day, and I don't believe he had anything to do with the sheep's disappearance, so I took him off my list. He told me a far-out story, though, that got me thinking. Then I looked up Bigfoot. Anyway, he told me of a place up in the Sierra Priesta Ponderosa forest where an Indian woman ran her small flock of sheep in the company of her cousin. A blue Merrill collie and a border collie that kept her flock together at night, off attacks by mountain lions and bobcats and sometimes wolverines. This one season, the woman and her cousin were bringing the flock down off of mountain grazing. It was late October, and snows were expected. She said she was not feeling well and lay down in a grassy meadow to rest, but woke up when she heard the sheep bleating, her cousin yelling, and the dogs loudly were onto something. The woman sheep herder says she got to her feet in time to see her dogs biting at the legs of a big, hairy man. He ambled off, escaping with a big ewe under his arm. The hairy man tried to fend off the biting dogs, kicked the one coolie dog all to hell, of which the dog eventually died. She called off the dogs and watched the hairy man disappear into the pine trees with his prize. He explained the hairy man to her was what we call Bigfoot or Sasquatch. She only told the story once to an elder, and she won't speak of it anymore. But he mentioned they come down from the north in the winter from the mountains. Upon hearing the sheepherder's story, putting two and two together, my sons, the half-breed, and I pretty much decided that we must have a rogue Bigfoot living somewhere near the property. I don't mind that so much, and we don't mind sharing some of the fruit off the trees with him, but stealing a man's stock is nothing. That's another thing. I don't want to put up with that. After looking up a few things, my boys and I, along with the other dogs, packed a rifle and rode out recently of a morning during the week of Thanksgiving. We stretched or wandered about the entire western stretch of our property line looking for signs. We worked the edge of the tree line for about 2 hours looking for a trail. We found one that led deep into the forest, a section none of us had ever ridden before or ventured off into. We worked the horses through there into and around some thick brush. Soon we came to a stream, and I stopped to gather our bearings and water the horses. Dismounting, I thought I heard someone cough. I asked, and nobody heard it but me. My horse jerked up, snorted, and became uneasy, sensing something none of us could see. The other mounts followed. All of us were focusing on keeping the horses under control as they danced about, bucking, kicking, and snorting. My sons thought it must be a mountain lion. I was not sure. We stood together there by the stream listening, calming the horses when the dogs started looking towards this thicket of tangled brush. Then the barking started in earnest, and they took off. Still, we couldn't see anything, but by now we all expected the dogs to see a tree or a mountain lion. We couldn't follow. The brush was too thick, but the dog noise seemed to end about 20 yards into this thick brush of brambles. We kept calling, and finally the dogs returned, and then they took off again. Pretty soon the dogs returned with their tongues hanging out, breathing heavily. We leashed the dogs and took them and led the horses back down to the stream. The dogs settled down, but the horses didn't. As we were making an effort to saddle up again, that is when it happened. There came this howl that lengthened into a scream. At first, it sounded like, one of the dogs farting. Low, guttural. It drug out, ending up into a high-pitched drone like a woman screaming as though she was being murdered. My body reacted with a chill and goosebumps, mainly because the stream was coming from very close, somewhere. The scream was coming very close. The scream was coming very close and got louder. Unlike, of course, the fart, Rob. I'm sorry I had to put that in there. It got my attention really fast. The half-breed yelled, "Soyoko, Bigfoot." As he pulled the rifle out of the scabbard along mounted side the horse, by now the horses were almost impossible to control. Then it got quiet. Not a sound. No birds, no crickets, no nothing. Everything was very still except for the horses. The dogs were by now cowering between my legs, and their ears prickled towards the thicket. Then in the distance we heard another scream. It must have come from across the next valley. We were figuring there's fixing to be two of these Bigfoot, and I felt fear for the first time. The dogs started whining. My grown boys hurriedly saddled up. We followed and took off down the trail, a full gallop all the way home. I've never heard a vocalization like that before. I've heard plenty coyote, plenty of wolves and elks, but nothing like this. It was not a mountain lion scream. It was 4 times as powerful. If this was a warning from Bigfoot, we got the message. So that was a pretty cool story. I thought, sorry it took me 18 months to the email I received to get out, whoever you are. I like that story about the Indians, the Indian lady that spoke about a hairy man carrying a ewe off from that property now taken over by this emailer. Sounds like something's out there. There's a Bigfoot. Hey, you guys know this. We don't really know, but I can tell you one thing. It didn't sound like it was no coyote, no mountain lion, or a bear. It was something. I'm guessing it was a Bigfoot. What do you thought? What's your thoughts on that? Leave me a comment. Let me know. I hope you enjoyed that. Last week I did that paranormal encounter story. I'm going to break it down live on a show, maybe today, maybe next week. Unsure about that yet. I'm Bigfoot Missing Rob. Thank you for subscribing. And until next time, I'm out.